mass communication truly an all-common status has been decried by some in the field of endeavor? With the push by some eggheads to tweak the mass curriculum, what should qualify you to teach and operate as an effective communicator? Plus, the media is seen as the most powerful entity on earth. Just how much is this power put to effective use as it controls the minds of the masses? Well, as we say on TV, sit back, relax, and hear the responses to these questions and more from my guest in a moment. My name is Blessing Abu. Welcome to the program. My guest was born on January 4, 1964 in Song local government area of Adamawa State. And in 1987, he obtained a degree in mass communications from the University of Maiduguri. And in 1990, he got a Master of Philosophy from the University of Ghana. For a PhD degree, he returned to the University of Maiduguri, which he back in 1987. My guest rose to the academic ladder to become a professor of media and society in October 2007. He has also worked as a pattern reporter, newscaster, and presenter at the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria and the NTA Yola. So he's not unfamiliar with this terrain. He should be doing this. He has been serving as a national and international consultant to bilateral as well as multilateral agencies like the United Nations Development Programme, UNESCO, as well as other national institutions. My guest is the immediate past Dean, Faculty of Communications, and now Dean, School of Postgraduate Studies, Bayero University, Kano. On the spot this week is Professor Umaru Pate. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And also you, Deputy President Association of Communicators.
Communication Scholars and Professionals of Nigeria.
So much further to your Professor. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And this is one area you love so much to talk about. Its interests and also your concerns are very valid. Yes, recently too, some of the concerns, as I've already pointed out, a gathering of minds have come together to decide to unbundle mass communication as a subject. Why is this expedient for us to stick with this?
Well, thank you very much. The unbundling of mass communication in Nigeria is a reality that we just can't escape. If you go to the curriculum of most universities in other parts of the world, there's nothing like mass communication again. Most of the departments are increasingly shifting towards specific areas in the business of communication, especially with the evolution in information and communication technologies all over the world. Now, what we have tried to do in Nigeria is for us to be sure that we are not left behind and that the products of our institutions are also in tune with the realities in other parts of the world. Number one, you cannot talk of training media professionals today without involving them or without involving the current evolving information and communication technologies. Certainly, they have to be computer literate. They must be fully immersed into all these communication things that we are seeing. As you can see, increasingly, people are getting less and less attached to radio, to even the conventional TV like this, and newspapers. Most people are now going online. If you take a survey today in Nigeria, you may be surprised that most people below 35 obtain their information mostly from their handsets. Perhaps 35 above from radio and TV and the conventional newspapers. Now, how do you train people who can fit into this new reality? And for us to be able to do that, we have to change the curriculum. And so what we have tried to do, we have invited UNESCO from the headquarters in Paris, their communication division. Their leader came to Nigeria for days, joined us to do this work. UNESCO is like the leading light in terms of communication training in the world. Then we involve the regulatory agencies here in Nigeria, like the NUC, the APCON, that is Association of Advertising Practitioners Council, NIPR, Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, and several others. Then media organizations like the NTA, the newspapers, as well as all other stakeholders. We came together and then brainstormed, looked at the existing curriculum and concluded that, look, there must be a shift. We just have to change. And then also brought in best practices in other parts of the world. what are the realities now in other parts of the world. So we gathered all these experiences and said, for us to produce students who can be competitively accepted in the industry, students who can qualify for postgraduate studies elsewhere outside Nigeria, and students who are prepared for the oncoming years in the communication industry, we just have to change. And the change must start from the level of training so that we can affect the attitude, the skills, the cognitive, the affective aspects of those that will be serving in the industry in the future.
Okay, so this reform definitely, as you pointed out, driven by industry as well as the academic concern.
Yes.
Now, while you were talking, at least part of your intro, you talked about the concern of the age that is even watching what we're talking about now.
Yes.
Let's hope the age we're even trying to reach will be watching this particular one. Yes. The role of the traditional media versus the new media, or what we're seeing.
We no longer call them traditional, we call them legacy media.
Legacy media.
Yes, this is the name now.
Okay.
Yes.
So, the legacy media, as you pointed out,
yes,
and the new media.
Yes.
How strong are we in trying to infuse this, whatever it's called, legacy now? Whatever legacy now is something that will hold for posterity.
Yes. This infusion is a necessity. Just like I've told you, now many people no longer buy newspapers. Take a look at, or take a survey of how many copies of newspapers are produced in Nigeria. And out of this, how many are sold? You'll be shocked with the number. Take a survey of how many people sit down to listen to radio the way we do. In fact, for you to get a good radio set to buy in the market now is difficult. Then take a survey also how many people sit down to watch normal conventional TV. You'll be surprised that the age of most of those that do this may be 30 above. Then how do you handle the majority who are the youth below 30 and who are the active force in the system? They are all online. This is why most newspapers all over the world now are increasingly going online, number one. And then they are also emphasizing voice and pictures, or audio and video. Take a look at most international newspapers today. You see that they have what they may refer to as video channels. They don't call them TV so that they don't compete with people like you. They call them video channels. They are also on audio so that at once you can access all of this. Many newspapers realize that without this, they'll be out of business. The same thing with TV stations like yours. Increasingly, you have to have many channels, you have to go digital, and you must be online in real time. Otherwise, yes, no, I'm saying, otherwise you'll be out of business. The same thing with radio stations. So, and they're increasingly becoming miniaturized, small, not huge like we used to know. And you can also see that content production is the key issue now. So the first thing is how do you produce content? The second thing is the platform for distributing the content. And in the distribution, you can see the major communication players like Google, Apple, Facebook, WhatsApp. They are the big names now in the business. In fact, they are taking away adverts. They are now also increasingly going into news production and general content production, competing with organizations like NTA. So it is a challenge for the legacy or for the conventional media to rise up. How do you confront this? And you cannot, because you do not have the capacity of confronting Google. So how do you work with them? As they are taking away adverts. The amount of money Google makes in advert now is much more than what you can imagine. So any media organization that wants to remain relevant, wants to remain credible, and wants to be in the minds of people must work in tandem with this organization. You must mainstream with them. And it's not easy. It is real investment, which means you have to invest in the change by acquiring the latest equipment in town, by changing the attitudes of those who work in the system. You have to get people who have the skills. And this is why for us in the universities, we must be relevant in all of these changes by training people who organizations like NTA can easily hire and then bring them.
Because I was going to come to that. Yes. What do universities need to do to make this new phase successful, which is something you've already started talking about. Now, let's break this down. There's some bundling now.
Yes.
What are the key courses that
Good.
you'll be looking at?
Good. First of all, you have to look at the philosophy. The philosophy of training of communication profession in Nigeria is also shifting to fit into this new reality. Then secondly, we have broken the courses. Instead of having one omnibus course called mass communication, now we have 7 new courses.
Okay.
One is journalism and media studies, which will be focusing on issues of news, current affairs, and that kind of stuff. Then we have broadcasting as an area of study also. People who have specialized in this business and can produce content that can fit into the sector. Then we have development communication, especially for international agencies, for our agencies that are involved in attitudinal change and behavior change communication and all of that. Then we have information and media studies, which will be dealing more with digital communication, where you train people, all this social media thing, instead of allowing people who are not well trained. We now have people who are really trained. Today, if you take a census of how many online newspapers are existing in Nigeria, you can't even count the number. How many online radio stations, how many online TV stations. So they need their own professionals, also people who have been well trained in this social media business. Then we also have advertising as a degree. We also have public relations as a degree. I think there are about 7 or how many?
This is 5 now, no?
Okay, then film and media studies.
Okay. All right.
There are supposed to be 7.
Okay, you have film and media, you have PR, you have advertising, information media studies, development
broadcasting, yes.
Broadcasting, then journalism and media studies. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you have 7.
Okay. So you see, the kind of people that will be trained will now specialize in these things. Of course, with good knowledge of human communication as background. So by the time they come into the industry, they will now be able to take the industry or serve the industry based on the needs of the society as at the time or as at today. And one issue that I have to also emphasize, now the issue of media financing or media economics. We have realized that the existing model of depending on advertising and government subvention can no longer sustain the media. You can see how many of our newspapers are struggling, radio stations that cannot pay salaries, TV stations that are hardly being able to invest in content production. So one of the areas we're also focusing is on media financing. How do we develop newer models? All over the world, it is a challenge. And now people are thinking all over, how do they come up with newer models of getting money for example, take NTA. You are not charging anybody for watching your program except now that you're on the platforms. But how much do you get? So it means you need newer models on how you can bring money. Financing. The same thing with our newspapers. So that we are focusing on it too.
All right, Professor Pate, when we return from this break, because we're going on the break now, what we need to do on this area that you've just read, media financing, and also the aspect of one of the courses that you have broken down, information media. You've already talked about people just coming to put something online. How do we regulate that? Sometimes the fear of, okay, what I've seen online, it's what school actually set the country on fire sometimes. So we need to see how we can actually look into that as well as other areas. You're watching On the Spot, and my guest is Professor Umaru Pate, and I'll be back just after this break.
Advertising your goods and services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. The station is on DSTV channel 419, GoTV channel 46, Star Times channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are eager to promote your business, goods, and services. So partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 0803-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
Welcome back. The program is On the Spot, and my guest is Professor Umaru Pate. We're taking a look at the unbundling of the program, mass communication, and I'm sure you're following. And if you just tuned in, well, you get to find out some other things that the media can do, as its power is in controlling the minds of the people. Okay, Professor Pate, media financing, like we talked about before the break, is something most organizations want to actually know how to do that, because it will be as if, like the online It's taking away the power, really,
Yes.
from the legacy media that we pointed out.
Yes.
How do we work this out?
This is an issue that the whole world is addressing. And newer models are coming up on how media organizations can raise sustainable funding for them to be able to operate at the optimal level. And this is not something we can finish discussing here, but it is also an issue that in Nigeria we are now focusing our attention on. Next year, we'll be doing a lot on this subject in Bayero University, Kano, holding conferences, inviting people from all over, so that we can brainstorm on media economics. It's not enough for us to have experts who can write, good editors, good producers, good directors, but at the end of the day, you need the money to run the organization. And not only that, there should be no reason why, as you are with your qualifications, with your experiences, you should be paid a pittance. You should have economic safety also, apart from other safeties. Yeah. So for us to have staff who are well paid, we need the money for the organizations. And this is one thing that we are now going to focus on in the context of the evolving communication technologies, just like what other countries are doing. Issue of subscription, issue of raising money through other sources. And I think we're going to succeed. Another area that is also now increasingly attracting attention, which we are also addressing in the new curriculum, is the issue of safety for journalists. There should be no reason why I should train an expert. He graduates, he's employed, yet he's not paid his salary. He has psychological fear all over him. Exactly. He is looking wretched. And if he's a lady, she is not safe because of her gender. She is harassed here and there. And all that kind of stuff. So we're now also equipping our professionals in such a way that they will remain safe, but also sensitizing the rest of the society. It is an issue all over the world.
Okay, Professor, let's get back to what we need to do to touch on this area as you are breaking them down gradually. The strength, do we have the strength, to, as in maybe manpower, lecturers to look into some of these areas of courses that will be broken down into, equipment for training? How ready are we as a nation?
The suggestions which the NUC has agreed to is for universities to start faculties of communication instead of just having a department of mass communication. Okay. Under the faculty, you could have these 7 new departments. But depending on your strength, you can start with 2, 3 departments. Well, for the NUC, the rule is you need at least 2 departments to start a faculty. So perhaps, depending on the number of staff available now, you can break them into journalism, broadcasting, public relations.
So how soon are you, at least everyone looking at, depends on the school?
I'm sure not, very soon you will hear an announcement from the NUC. We are hoping for that. Mm-hmm. And then it's for the universities to now take on the new thing, because it's going to be a rule. If you don't do it, you may not get the accreditation of the NUC. But you know, universities are territorially protective of what they do. Many of us are very conservative to change, especially now that it's going to require extra cost, because they have to equip. If you want to run a department of information and media studies, for example, you must have well-equipped media laboratory, computer laboratory and all of that. If you are going to run a department for film studies, there are some equipment you have to purchase. In fact, for every of these things, there are some equipment and laboratories, or what you may call studios, that have to go with them. You may need...
because it's very key, Professor.
Yes.
If we need to strengthen the relationship between the industry and the academic classroom, like we want to point out, yes. If these are already equipped, the schools are already equipped,
well, most of them have the equipment, but there are issues. In some of them, the equipment are outdated. Mm-hmm. In some of them, the equipment cannot match the number of students they have. In some of them, they don't have at all. So they have to address these issues for them to successfully run this program and get the accreditation of the National Universities Commission for them to run the programs. And the issue of maintaining linkages between the industry and the academia, we have been also doing that, and it has also been emphasized in the curriculum, where we now send our staff and students on internship to media organizations, especially media organizations that are very progressive in terms of having the equipment and the right staff.
What kind of report do you get back? Because I know even here at the NTA, we have some interns yes. around, and the zeal to actually, for some of them anyway, not yes. every one of them, the zeal to actually put themselves in what is being taught or what they are seeing. Yes. For some, it's not really there. How do we?
And this is not only peculiar to communication. It's all over. Even in the hospitals, you have some of our senior doctors complaining at times with their students who are being trained as medical doctors. Or you go to the law section, you still have you have some good students who are always willing to learn, who are willing to be part of the industry. You have others who are just there accidentally, who have just been pushed into the thing, or those who feel being in mass comm is just coming to sit and read news on TV without knowing the other intricacies. All they know about mass comm is just what they see on TV, and so they want to beautify themselves and appear beautifully on TV, but it's far more than that.
Okay, talking about training again, before we went to the break, I talked about aspect of the new media, which we have, the social media. Everyone now wants to write, everyone wants to publish, everyone wants to put out one video, put out one information there, and most of the time, we're wary of the kind of information you get on the internet. And they tell you the internet never forgets. Where's our greatest concern?
Google has everything.
It's true.
Yes.
Where's our greatest concern now in giving the right information? Because if we're going to be controlling the minds of the masses, it is what they get to hear and how they get to hear it that is key.
And this is why we need organizations like NTA to invest massively into the social media. Because if you ignore the social media and think it is for the people on the streets, you are making a mistake, because this is where the people are. This is the trend. You cannot go on the news without knowing what is trending in town. So, and this will happen. It will continue to happen. Don't think it will stop, for 3 or so reasons. Number one, content production is very easy. I can be my editor, my reporter, and produce my content.
So how do we check
Number
that
two,
content?
distribution is easy because I have my smartphone. With this phone, and don't forget, 5G is coming. 4G is about to be, is already in Nigeria, which means distribution will be very easy. So it will also be there. Now, the political economy of the social media itself. Some of them, so some people I need for business, they tell you how many hits they have recorded, how many this, how many that, how many likes, all of that, and they make money out of it. And so people, for mischievous reasons. Now, it is not by sitting down and lamenting and saying you are going to defeat them. You can't defeat the technology as it is. Rather, what we shall do is, how do we also buy into the technology, occupy our own space, and compete with them, so that people can have a way of cross-checking. Anytime I see any information on the social media, I cross-check with NTA, with channels, with this, with Daily Trust, because these are media organizations that I already trust. They have some level of credibility. So anytime I see something on the social, I cross-check. Now, how do you also invest to make sure you are competing with them? This is the only way we can beat them. And then how do we also enhance our credibility by making sure that what we offer the people is what the people want, so that they do not now distrust yours to trust the other one. Or what you cannot take, you can see it on the social media. So we have to open up the space, open up the competitive space, and invest in it, and also change the attitudes of those who man the industry. You cannot have digital equipment, fantastic equipment, and then analog-minded fellows managing it. It can't work.
So the analog people too need to come up to,
of course, they have to
digitalize.
We have to change them so that they can work with the equipment. This is what is happening all over the world. We have to go back to school to learn this. When I was in the university, I didn't learn about computing, but I have to force myself to become relevant in the system.
Because I was going to ask you now, with the background in mass communication, of course, you're making your such different incursions.
Let me tell you what I just did as the Dean of the Faculty of Communication. I got a grant to establish a laboratory, a computer laboratory for Bayero University, Kano. 150 new computers with digital whatever. We are starting a brand new radio station, digitally equipped, streaming online. So I did that in Maiduguri before I left. Maiduguri to join Kano. I went to UNESCO, got a grant to start another computer laboratory for them, because this is the way you have to train these kids on these computers. Otherwise, you are just wasting their time.
You're behind time.
Yes.
Okay. Well, lastly, because we must go now. The media as the fourth state of the realm, due to so many things, are supposed to be playing a critical role. But to appear for those, at least, who are industry watchers, that we've not really lived up to that expectation in some ways.
Who has lived up to expectation? Is it the politician? Is it the civil service? The media is doing well, given the circumstances in which we are operating. Look at the challenges of the media from different perspectives. Compare what we are doing with what other people are. At least every morning when I wake up, I tune to NT, I will see something. Some other ministries, how do they work? NEPA, how does it work? Water board, how does it work? So you cannot just single out the media and blame it alone. You have to look at what is happening in the society as a whole. And then based on that, you can now look at the share of the media. So I do not buy the idea that we have not done well. It's just that we don't have the time. Otherwise, we can start reviewing what we have done in the last 20 years.
20 years.
Yes.
Well, definitely, there's at least...
Of course, there are problems. There are challenges. I'm not saying there are no challenges, but we cannot simply condemn the media to say we have not done well. Okay. No, I disagree with that line of thinking.
So if you were not in the business of media communication, what else would you have loved to do, Professor Pate?
Perhaps a pilot. I don't know.
Oh, yes, you're still on air.
is one profession that I also love, and I still read a lot about aircrafts, watch a lot of programs. I don't know if you know the National Geography, there's this air crash.
Yes,
I don't miss the programs.
Wow.
And I have a lot of interest in that area.
Who
or
knows?
Maybe just a teacher in the primary school.
Oh,
no, I'm too old. No, I'm too old for that.
No, never say never.
No, I'm too old.
Never say never.
No aviation school will admit me now for...
Oh, perhaps you could still have some private training. Anyway, Professor Umaru Pate, Dean School of Postgraduate Studies, Bayero University, Kano, and also Deputy President, Association of Communication Scholars and Professionals of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the spot.
I'm grateful. Thank you very much.
Well, for one described without inhibition as the most important and influential figure in the history of modern advertising, the saying of William Van Bart, an American advertising icon, should keep everyone in line to the kind of information you want society to thrive on, even from this moment. All of us who professionally use the mass media are shapers of society. We can either vulgarize that society, we can brutalize it, or we can help it lift it onto a higher level, which is what Professor Pate and his colleagues are trying to do. And that's on the spot today. My name is Blessing Abu. Goodbye.